Welcome to the Red Dice Diaries, and in this RPG review we're going to be looking at Copper Jackals, Soldiers Without Compromise. This supplement is published by Absolute Tabletop and was written by Tim and James Kearney. It's a supplement for D&D 5th edition and is available from Drive-Thru RPG. I'll put a link to that in the description of this video. The price is about $6.95 US, which is approximately £5 in British money as of the time of recording. Absolute Tabletop were kind enough to send me a review copy of the PDF. It's full colour and has 140 pages. The front cover of the PDF has a nice leather effect and a copper coloured embossing on it, which is very nice and gives it the feel of an actual weighty tome. I'm a big fan of this sort of thing. The cover also lets us know that this supplement is part of the Dragon Grin setting, which I believe to be the default campaign world for Absolute Tabletop supplements. Once we've got through the few obligatory pages of credits and open gaming license, we're into the contents, and it's clear even from just looking at this that there is an awful lot crammed into this PDF. The foreword is an interesting read. The supplement is an organisation supplement, and by that I mean it provides a group or organisation that the player characters can belong to and that can serve as a framework for creating a campaign. In some ways this is similar to the previous Absolute Tabletop supplement, The Convocation, that I reviewed. Now I quite like the idea of this Expendables style organisation that is portrayed in this PDF. I'm considering having some sort of Adventurers Guild style group in my currently running Three Brothers D&D campaign. So this is a PDF that personally I might find very useful as inspiration. I also like the fact that this supplement was born not out of a desire to include more action or more sort of militaristic leanings in a campaign, but to create a sense of camaraderie and belonging amongst diverse player characters. I think this is a laudable aim and something that should be most definitely encouraged. Now, during this review, I'm not going to cover each chapter in exhaustive detail, since it would result in a truly lengthy video, even by my standards. Instead, I'm going to move through, pick out a few highlights for me, and then give an overall summarisation of the book at the end. The book gets off to a great start by revealing 11 grisly truths about the Dragon Grin setting. As someone who doesn't know a lot about it, this was very useful information, and it gives you an idea of the assumptions that the rest of the PDF will be operating under. Although I'm not sure about imminence or eminence, however it's pronounced, a primal magic that exists alongside divine and arcane magic. This is just a personal thing, but I'm not really sure how much D&D needs yet another type of magic. To be honest, some of the magic using classes that already existed in 5th edition seemed a little surplus to requirements for me. I do like the idea of a world where, for all intents and purposes, evil has won, and the heroes are fighting a sort of guerrilla war against it. It reminds me a lot of the old Midnight campaign setting published by Fantasy Flight. I think there's a lot of potential for story there, and I can see how such a background would lend itself to and suit a militaristic campaign. The Copper Jackals are an unsanctioned paramilitary organisation whose members are empowered by a mystical metal called Titan Copper, giving them special abilities. Again, this seems a little similar to the Convokers supplement. I think the mysterious Titan Copper has a lot of interesting plot potential, where it comes from, how the leader of the group, the first Jackal, creates or obtains it, and whether or not it really can be used to track every Copper Jackal in existence, are all great potential stories, just waiting for an inventive GM to breathe life into them. Reading through the description of the Copper Jackals puts me in mind of the old A-Team TV series, a group of people beyond the official remit of the law, trying to do what is right using the materials and tools they have to hand, and this comparison is by no means a bad thing as far as I'm concerned. There's a beautifully illustrated timeline of events in the Dragon Grin setting, containing events important to the Copper Jackals. There are a lot of potentially interesting story threads here that could be built on, and I assume will be in future publications. I, for one, would love to know more about the mysterious harbingers mentioned on the timeline. The PDF explains the structure of the Copper Jackals in some detail. painting a picture of a decentralised organisation split into chapters and squads that operate with a reasonable degree of autonomy. I think this is a wise move since it gives individual GMs license to paint the Copper Jackals with whatever brush suits their own campaign. A Copper Jackal faction class is also introduced. Faction classes being an overlay of new abilities that sort of lie on top of an existing class. Now, I'm relieved to see that apparently a lot of playtesting, over 50 hours apparently, has occurred, although I wonder how well a mixed party containing people with and without faction classes would actually fare in terms of game balance. Although, to be honest, I'm not sure of the extent to which faction classes are the norm in the Dragon Grin setting. If it's assumed that everyone is going to acquire a faction class, then I don't think balance would be a problem, and the actual class itself seems fairly interesting, without adding a great deal of complexity to the game. The description of the actual physical act of becoming a Copper Jackal is incorporated into the description of the faction class, describing how a new recruit is implanted with a chunk of magical copper and then given a mission to prove themselves. I liked how the theme of currency seemed to run through this chapter. The initiation process is referred to as minting, and the implanted copper assumes the shape of a blank coin following a recruit's successful mission. There are some great small pieces of artwork scattered throughout this chapter and the rest of the PDF, helping to break up the text, showing things like coins, hunks of alchemical copper, etc. I quite like the idea of the Jackal bites, and this is the label for the form that the magical Titan copper takes. This can be a tattoo, a replacement body part, or even war paint. Now, it's always nice to have items and affiliations change the way a character actually looks as well as how they play. I can definitely see this being something I'm going to yoink for my own games. There are a few random tables provided to help you decide on the exact form that a Jackal bite takes, which are a great help for someone who is struggling or who needs a jumping off point. The Jackal bite is one of the main cool bits of the supplement, as far as I'm concerned. It glows when Jackal Boons are activated, which reminds me of my old days playing Exalted and things like that. There's also a number of little abilities that come with it, referred to as Copper Boons, and these are the main powers that the faction class provides. My only slight personal niggle with this part of the book would be the concept of pinging people, as the book calls it, which describes recognising them by sensing their attunement mark. Even for a setting with some elements of arcanotech, like Dragon Grin, the use of the word pinging seemed a little modern and out of place, to be honest, but this is a very minor niggle. A huge chunk of the PDF is taken up with describing sample Copper Jackal chapters, the benefits of different levels of renown in each, and the sort of powers a master of the chapter can provide. And there is a wide-ranging spectrum of different chapters, with different aims and goals, ranging from monster hunting to finding fallen heroes taken before their time and resurrecting them. Now, initially I was a little concerned that the authors were trying to do a little too much with the organisation, having a Copper Jackal chapter for everything, if you will. However, I think these concerns were largely unfounded. The authors are by no means saying that you have to use all of these chapters within your game, but by providing such a wide range of different options, they actually give you the tools to make the Copper Jackals into whatever you want and your game needs. I'm a big fan of the toolbox approach, so this was great to see. Each of the different chapter descriptions is illustrated with a round copper design, which I assume represents the most common symbol or design that Jackal bites associated with those chapters take. These pieces of art are simple but effective, helping to break up the text and also reinforcing the various shades of copper that run throughout the book, tying the art and the text neatly together. There is a large list of Copper Boons in the book. Effectively, these are like additional bonuses or feats added on top of any powers gained via the core 5th edition rules. Be warned, there are an awful lot of these boons in the book, but they are nice and clearly laid out in table format, describing the mechanics very clearly. Personally, I'm not sure whether I want or need a massive load of extra feats and powers in D&D 5th edition, since one of the main draws for me about 5e was that it did away with the power fit or feat bloat that in my opinion plagued version 3 and 3.5. But If you are looking for extra powers or something to give your game a bit of extra spice, then you're almost certain to find something to your taste in this section of the book. One thing I did love in the Boons section was the copper archetypes, effectively a list of 4 pre-selected copper boons that work well together. For the person who has some idea of where they want their character to go in the future, but who isn't sure on how to achieve that using the massive list of boons, these would be an absolute godsend, and I think it was a good move on the part of the authors to include them. Some examples of these are the Copper Monk, who is a deadly mobile warrior, the Copper Ghost, who is all about the stealth and the subterfuge, and Copper Skirmishers, who is a sort of warrior equipped to fight expertly in enclosed spaces. Reading the history of the Copper Jackals, like most real-life organisations, there have been numerous schisms and power struggles and splinter factions, splitting off to create other groups throughout the Copper Jackals' history. Some of these are detailed in the antagonist chapter of the book, such as the Peacemakers, an offshoot faction who returned to the floating capital of Innis, which is the final stronghold of light in the Dragon Grin setting, and who were formerly deputised as peacemakers and executioners. There's a sort of cool understanding between the two organisations, with the peacemakers seeing the original Copper Jackals as unchecked vigilantes. Then there is the Rustborn, traitors who defected from the Copper Jackals and somehow managed to keep their jackal bites intact. Separated from the main organisation though, the Titan Copper in the Rustborn gradually burns out and oxidises. In order to replace this, they attack loyal jackals and steal their Titan Copper. And last but by no means least, the Harbingers of Grin, who are necromantic warriors who worship the primordials of old. They are powerful creatures and a force to be reckoned with. I quite like the fact that sample stats weren't provided for these enemies, leaving the GM to fit them to the needs of their own particular campaign. However, I do think time-pushed GMs would have benefited from some example stats. There's a small section from Matt Click at A Fistful of Dice, who provides some interesting information on creating a nemesis for the Copper Jackals campaign. And then we jump into a GMing section of the book that discusses how someone could actually GM a Copper Jackals campaign. The info in this chapter is good, and also provides amended XP budgets for encounters, given that Copper Jackal characters are more powerful than your standard 5e ones. The PDF also has some tables for generating incursions, the name given to missions undertaken by the Copper Jackals. And finally, it rounds off with some useful advice on using Copper Jackal mechanics in a campaign that does not specifically focus on them. So, in conclusion, I very much enjoyed reading this supplement. I thought the idea of an A-Team-esque band of vigilante heroes empowered to stand against an overwhelming darkness was a good one that was explored in a very interesting way in the PDF. The system mechanics in the book seem well tested and are generally unobtrusive, but the area where the supplement really shines for me, not to say that the Copper Boons aren't interesting because they are, is the background of the organisation and the sheer amount of options for different elements of the Copper Jackals that could be brought into a game. If you have any interest in running a game where the players are members of a varied organisation that is trying to make a difference in a world almost crushed under the boot heel of evil, then I highly recommend you give this supplement a look. Likewise, if you are looking for new feats or an alternate way of increasing the power level of your D&D 5th edition game, then this book is sure to contain plenty that interests you. So there we are. I hope you've enjoyed this review. You'll consider clicking on the red dice up there to subscribe to my channel. As always, if you have any comments, please put them in the comments section down below or hit me up in the Google Plus links. I really do enjoy reading what you write. You can catch up with us on all the usual social media and via our blog at www.reddicediaries.com. Until I see you next time, take care and happy gaming.